Scream your way out. How action beats anxiety. Introduction. You recognize that visceral lurch, the sensation where your heart erupts into a frantic drum solo against your ribcage, your chest constricts with the force of a vise, and your thoughts splinter into a runaway train of what-ifs and should-haves. Suddenly, the simplest undertaking transforms into scaling Mount Everest. A phone call, a trip to the market, even a mere email response can feel insurmountably daunting. It's as if a dense fog descends, obscuring clarity and impeding progress. If this resonance strikes a chord, know you are far from solitary. So many of us navigate life with this incessant hum of apprehension, this persistent knot in our stomachs. It's alarmingly easy to feel utterly alone, to believe you are somehow flawed or deficient. Yet, the unvarnished truth is this: anxiety is an intrinsic facet of the human condition. It is a potent force, and its dominion often leaves us immobilized, desperately attempting to reason ourselves out of its clutches, dissecting every minutiae, or simply retreating until its tempest subsides. We endeavor to parley with it, to dismantle it with logic. But herein lies the precipice where we so often stumble. The inaugural, and arguably most pivotal, revelation concerning anxiety is this: you will never vanquish this adversary through sheer cerebration. To attempt to outwit anxiety with your intellect is akin to engaging in a placid discourse with a blaring fire alarm at its zenith. It is an exercise in futility. Anxiety is at its core a physical gambit. Your body is sounding an urgent alarm, inundating you with sensations that feel profoundly real, intensely threatening. It is your internal alarm system gone awry, proclaiming the presence of a tiger when, in actuality, only a slightly overgrown houseplant resides in the room. These physiological manifestations, the racing pulse, the trembling hands, the churning viscera, these are the true phantoms. They feel like an authentic peril, yet they are frequently not, but your body's overzealous response. And the more you endeavor to think your way out of these sensations, the more you inadvertently nourish them. You become ensnared in a self-perpetuating cycle, overanalyzing the symptoms, which in turn exacerbates them. It is a labyrinthine loop that can appear unbreakable. This is the juncture at which we introduce an alternative paradigm, a formidable concept I term action-based anxiety confrontation. Discard the notion of silencing the alarm with reason. Instead, we shall cultivate the capacity to act in defiance of the alarm. This entails acknowledging the physical tremors. Yes, your heart is pounding, your palms are slick with perspiration, and then consciously choosing to proceed nonetheless. It is about confronting anxiety not with an augmentation of thought, but with decisive action. And here lies the profound revelation: perfection is not requisite. The objective is not flawless execution. It is the deliberate act of taking a step, any step, however small, however tentative. Consider the very title of this book, Scream Your Way Out. At times, that scream transcends literal vocalization, manifesting as a potent, resolute action that shatters the paralysis. It is a visceral pushback. Each instance you undertake an action, irrespective of its imperfection, you have secured a victory. These are not merely incremental advances, they are triumphs. They begin to forge resilience, demonstrating to your mind that you possess the capacity to navigate these feelings and still advance. This is the architectonic of momentum, constructed brick by brick, action by action. This book serves as your compass, guiding you toward an understanding of that physical bluff and equipping you with the means to call it. We shall delve into pragmatic, unadorned strategies for engaging both your body and mind in the active confrontation of fear. Rather than succumbing to its evasion, you will discover how to transmute those overwhelming sensations into a potent impetus for action, how to laud each individual stride you undertake, and how to sculpt a life where anxiety is not the sole arbiter of your decisions. We shall transition from a state of mental inertia to one of physical engagement and liberation. As one who has grappled with the corporeal grip of anxiety for years, I have unearthed a truth that fundamentally altered my trajectory. Action is the singular antidote. Are you prepared to cease the relentless cogitation and commence the purposeful doing? Are you ready to scream your way free from anxiety's dominion and reclaim the narrative of your life? Let us embark. Chapter 1. Understanding Anxiety and Fear. 1. What is anxiety? Anxiety descends like a runaway train in the chest. The heart hammers a frantic drum solo, breath becomes a ragged gasp, and muscles seize with an iron grip. The mind, a whirlwind of a million what-ifs and catastrophic imaginings, orchestrates a full-body takeover. And its most insidious trick? The profound, unshakable reality it conjures. It whispers of imminent peril, of danger breathing down your neck. But here lies the paradigm-shifting secret. Anxiety is often a grand deception, a magician's sleight of hand. Imagine a showman, all bombast and spectacle, proclaiming to vanish an elephant. The roar of the crowd, the dramatic gestures, they are potent, yet the pachyderm remains. Anxiety mirrors this performance. It unleashes a torrent of visceral signals, the racing pulse, the trembling hands, the churning gut, a primal scream of danger. It compels belief in an impending catastrophe, a crisis beyond your capacity to endure. Yet, more often than not, the peril is a phantom. It is the sensation of danger amplified and grotesquely distorted. This is the bedrock of what we term action-based anxiety confrontation. It posits that anxiety, masquerading as an insurmountable mental quandary, is in fact a physical bluff. It is a game you cannot win through ratiocination. One cannot reason with a runaway locomotive or cajole a magician into revealing their artifice. A different approach is imperative. This principle liberates us from the futile pursuit of outwitting anxiety, instead forging a path to confront it head-on, physically. We acknowledge the visceral onslaught, perhaps drawing a grounding breath or two, and then, crucially, we act. Perfection is not the goal. Grandeur is not required. The sole necessity is an action undertaken in the crucible of anxious feeling. Let us pause to dissect this somatic experience, for its significance is paramount. Anxiety is not confined to the ethereal realm of thought. It is a corporeal invasion. A constricting band may tighten around the chest. The stomach may churn, a tempest of acrobatic butterflies. Vertigo may descend, hands may tremble, and legs may feel as though they might buckle. Swallowing may become a Herculean effort, or a cold sweat may break forth. These are not manifestations of weakness or delusion. They are starkly, undeniably real physiological responses. Your body, convinced of an imminent threat, mobilifies as if facing genuine peril, even when your rational intellect asserts otherwise. This is why the entreaty to think your anxiety away so often proves fruitless. You are attempting to resolve a physical predicament with purely mental instruments, akin to painting a house with a toothbrush, a laborious, exasperating, and largely ineffectual endeavor. Herein lies the critical distinction between fear and anxiety. Fear is an innate, salutary response to a palpable, present danger. If footsteps echo with alarming proximity in a darkened thoroughfare, your heart will quicken, palms will dampen, and adrenaline will surge. This is fear. It is your body's sentinel, issuing a stark decree. Threat detected. Prepare for engagement or evasion. It is a potent survival mechanism, indispensable when actual danger looms. Anxiety, conversely, is akin to that same sentinel sounding an alarm in the absence of immediate threat. It is a reaction to a potential, often nebulous, future peril. It is the tremor of apprehension before a job interview, despite possessing the requisite qualifications. It is the premonition of mishap on a first date, before the encounter has even transpired. It is the dread of a presentation you are capable of delivering, yet the specter of what-ifs regarding failure looms insurmountably. Your physiology still orchestrates the fight-or-flight response. The accelerated pulse, the shallow respiration, yet no discernible, present danger, necessitates combat or flight. It is the alarm blaring incessantly while the edifice remains unignited. This perpetual, unaddressed alarm can engender a pervasive sense of disquiet, a subliminal hum of apprehension that seldom dissipates. Consider Sarah. A gifted graphic designer, Sarah has been tasked with presenting her latest project to the entire company next week. The moment the meeting was scheduled, anxiety seized her. Her chest tightened, and she found herself replaying every conceivable presentation pitfall. Forgotten lines, projector malfunction, a displeased boss, whispers of colleagues. She devoted hours to researching public speaking techniques, absorbing TED talks, meticulously rehearsing every word, every gesture. Her internal monologue ran, "If I can just plan enough, if I can anticipate every eventuality, I can control this." Yet, the more she deliberated, the more her distress intensified. The physical symptoms escalated. Sleep became elusive. Anxiety was no longer a mere thought, it was a palpable weight crushing her. She was attempting to outmaneuver a visceral sensation that had subjugated her body. The scream in our book title, Scream Your Way Out, transcends the literal, though at times it may indeed involve a vocal eruption. It embodies a metaphor for direct, physical release. It signifies the acknowledgement of the intense, pent-up energy anxiety generates and the imperative to discharge it. When anxiety inundates your system, it is akin to a dam on the verge of breaching. Attempting to contain it through sheer willpower or ceaseless rumination proves exhausting and frequently exacerbates the mounting pressure. A scream, a sudden surge of motion, or any decisive action can serve as a pressure valve. It is an assertion to your body, "I perceive this potent energy, and I shall not succumb to its overwhelming force. I shall act." This act of doing, of expelling that somatic tension, signals to your body that the perceived threat is being confronted, not merely endured. It is not about suppression, but about channeling the resultant energy. Thus, how does this physical manifestation of anxiety feel, and how does it diverge from a rational, fear-driven response to unequivocal danger? When confronted by a speeding vehicle, fear is sharp, focused, and urgent. Your body is primed for immediate action. To leap aside, to slam on the brakes. The sensation is intense, certainly, but it possesses a clear objective and purpose: survival. Anxiety, conversely, tends to be a more diffuse, lingering malaise. It is a low-grade thrum of unease that can escalate into acute panic, yet its origin is frequently obscure. The heart may race, yet you are seated at your desk. Hands may tremble, yet you are merely about to initiate a telephone call. The physical sensations remain identical alarm bells, but the fire is often a phantom. The fear response is a sudden, piercing siren announcing a genuine emergency. Anxiety, however, is akin to a faulty smoke detector, emitting constant, gratuitous beeps, rendering you perpetually tense and on edge, even in the absence of smoke. And if anxiety is a bluff, what is its biological raison d'etre, and how has modern existence warped this primordial function? Biologically, anxiety is an inheritance from our ancestral survival mechanisms. Our forebears confronted tangible, immediate threats, predators, famine, natural cataclysms. Their bodies demanded hypervigilance, readiness for flight or fight at a moment's notice. This alarm system, this bluff of impending doom, was vital for their continued existence. In the contemporary era, however, our dangers are often less corporeal and more abstract. We fret over finances, social media comparisons, professional pressures, and future uncertainties. These are not immediate threats necessitating flight from a saber-toothed tiger. Yet, our ancestral alarm system, calibrated for those primal dangers, remains active. It is analogous to a fire alarm, so exquisitely sensitivity erupts at the mere preparation of toast. Modern life, with its incessant demands and inherent uncertainties, has effectively amplified the sensitivity of our anxiety alarm, rendering it more prone to issuing those bluff signals even when no genuine conflagration exists. It represents a profound discordance between our ancient biology and our contemporary circumstances. We have thus established that anxiety is a potent, physical bluff designed for our protection, yet one that frequently malfunctions. In our modern milieu, it inundates our physiology with signals of peril, even when no immediate threat is present. But if rationalization offers no egress and the physical sensations are overwhelming, what then? The solution resides not in deciphering the bluff's intricacies, but in calling it, and that, as we shall soon discover, commences with a single, imperfect act. 2. How fear affects us. Our bodies are marvels of biological engineering, meticulously crafted for preservation. For millennia, our forebears navigated a perilous existence, constantly assailed by predatory beasts, unforgiving climates, and the gnawing specter of scarcity. The sudden appearance of a saber-toothed predator or the ominous gathering of storm clouds would invariably trigger a primal cascade. Within them, this is the ancient and potent mechanism we now recognize as the fight-or-flight response, a finely tuned survival apparatus designed to facilitate escape from imminent peril. Envision it as the simultaneous engagement of a vehicle's emergency brake and accelerator. Your heart begins to thrum with an urgent rhythm, propelling blood with relentless force to your musculature, empowering swifter flight or more vigorous defense. Your respiration quickens, a desperate bid to saturate your system with vital oxygen. Your senses heighten to an almost supernatural acuity. Colors may blaze with an unnatural vibrancy, sounds sharpen to crystalline clarity, and a potent surge of energy courses through you. It is your organism's unequivocal declaration, danger, immediate action required. This physiological symphony is undeniably brilliant when confronted by genuine threats. Yet, herein lies the insidious complexity. In our contemporary lives, this ancient sentinel is frequently deceived. While we may no longer be stalked by tigers, the specter of a looming work deadline, the anticipation of a challenging conversation, or even the mere contemplation of a social engagement can plunge our systems into that same primordial alarm state. It is akin to the emergency systems of a car activating in response to mere traffic congestion. The threat is illusory, but the physiological reverberations are undeniably real. This is the crucible where anxiety begins to masquerade as genuine danger. In such instances, your body is deluged with potent biochemical agents, chief among them adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline orchestrates the immediate eruption of energy, igniting your heart rate, precipitating clammy palms, and imbuing your mind with a restless buzz. Cortisol, often dubbed the stress hormone, lingers, its presence fostering a pervasive state of tension and unease. It is your system preparing for an extended confrontation, even when the perceived struggle is merely an ephemeral thought. This intrinsic alarm system, forged for dire emergencies, can become chronically activated, leaving us in a perpetual state of heightened vigilance, devoid of any actual precipitating crisis. This internal alarm system orchestrates a veritable symphony of somatic sensations, capable of inducing profound overwhelm. It transcends a mere nebulous feeling of disquiet. It is a visceral, palpable experience. Your heart may feel poised to escape your chest, or a peculiar constriction might tighten your chest, impeding the free flow of breath. Some individuals report a sensation of choking, or an unshakable feeling of air insufficiency. These are manifestations of your respiratory patterns recalibrating in an attempt to manage the perceived crisis. Then there is the dominion of your stomach. While the familiar flutter of butterflies is common, it can escalate into a more formidable experience. You might be assailed by a sudden wave of nausea, a prelude to sickness. Your abdomen may contract with cramping, or an urgent, undeniable need to evacuate may manifest. These are all signals from your body, striving to contend with the pervasive stress. Your digestive processes decelerate, for in a survival scenario, your organism's paramount concern is the redirection of blood flow to the muscles essential for combat or flight, not the intricate business of nutrient assimilation. On the neurological frontier, fear can induce a disorienting sense of vertigo or lightheadedness, as if the world is undergoing a subtle, unsettling gyration. Your hands might betray an involuntary tremor, or your entire physique could tremble uncontrollably. Occasionally, peculiar effervescent sensations, akin to pins and needles, may pervade your extremities. Your musculature may contract with an almost preternatural tension, as though perpetually bracing for impact, leading to aching shoulders or a clenched jaw. Even your sensory apparatus can undergo alteration. Your vision may soften at the edges, or you might become acutely hypersensitive to every minute sound or flicker of light, causing you to startle at phantom stimuli. Some individuals articulate a profound sense of dissociation, as if observing their own existence from an external vantage point. These are all entirely natural physiological responses to what your brain has interpreted as a perilous situation. This is the locus where we apprehend the fundamental essence of what is termed action-based anxiety confrontation. Anxiety frequently presents itself as an irrefutable and potent verity. It transcends mere rumination. It is an all-encompassing corporeal phenomenon. The sheer intensity of these somatic manifestations, the racing heart, the labored breath, the dizzying sensations, can be so overwhelming as to irrevocably convince us of the imminent and tangible nature of the threat. Our bodies are vociferating an urgent plea: flee, conceal yourself, catastrophe is nigh. And because these signals are so profoundly compelling, we are predisposed to accord them absolute credence. We feel an imperative, an unassailable conviction, that we must extricate ourselves from the circumstances engendering these distressing sensations. This constitutes the bluff. Your organism is broadcasting a formidable alarm, yet the danger to which it is responding is often not a physical threat at all. It is the knowing apprehension of social judgment, the paralyzing fear of failure, or the lingering specter of past trauma. The physical sensations are an authentic, unvarnished reaction to your brain's perception, but that perception itself is frequently distorted or amplified. The sheer force of the physical symptoms feels like irrefutable evidence of extreme peril, but in reality, it is merely your survival system operating at peak, albeit misdirected, capacity. Your body behaves as an overly sensitive smoke detector triggered by the faintest wisp of steam, convinced of an inferno. Given the profoundly unsettling and alarming nature of these physical symptoms, our innate inclination is to shun any circumstance that might precipitate them. If you are aware that public speaking induces a racing heart, clammy hands, and a complete mental blank, your brain will swiftly forge an aversion to such situations, prioritizing their avoidance at all costs. This is the genesis of avoidance behaviors. You will fabricate excuses, feign illness, or simply decline opportunities that carry the potential for such discomfort. This strategy of avoidance appears efficacious in the immediate term. The instant you withdraw from the precipitating situation, the overwhelming physical symptoms begin to recede. Your heart rate moderates, your respiration normalizes, and a palpable sense of relief washes over you. This relief serves to reinforce the conviction that your decision to retreat was the correct one. Your brain asserts, you see, that situation was indeed too perilous. Your apprehension was justified. The physical symptoms were definitive proof. However, herein lies the fundamental flaw. This cyclical pattern of avoidance, fueled by the visceral discomfort of fear, offers no genuine resolution. It merely perpetuates and amplifies the anxiety. Each instance of avoidance denies you the opportunity to discover your own resilience, to realize that the perceived danger was far less formidable than it felt, or to develop strategies for managing the physical sensations. You are, in essence, capitulating to the bluff, solidifying the notion that you are too fragile to confront these feelings. The body's formidable alarm system transmutes into a cage, inhibiting your capacity to fully engage with life. We become captives of our own physiological responses, irrevocably convinced that our sole recourse for safety lies in evading anything that might trigger the alarm. These somatic responses, while intensely uncomfortable and frequently terrifying, are not indicative of inherent weakness or a fractured psyche. They represent the body's powerful, albeit sometimes misguided, endeavor to safeguard you. Yet, due to the sheer potency of these signals, we are prone to fall prey to the illusion of their absolute truth, prompting us to retreat rather than to confront. The subsequent section will delve into the reasons why this instinct to think our way out of fear is an ultimately futile undertaking, and why a fundamentally different approach is desperately required. 3. The trap of overthinking. Our minds can morph into frantic theater directors, perpetually casting our lives in the bleakest of roles. We conjure every conceivable scenario of disaster, replaying those dreadful scenes with relentless fidelity. This is not preparation, it is the rehearsal of failure. When you envision a dire outcome, your body, oblivious to its fictional origin, experiences the terror, the stress, the panic. Your heart hammers, your breath grows shallow, your muscles knot. It is a physiological charade, and your body is utterly convinced of its authenticity. Consider this. Have you ever felt that visceral clench in your stomach before a crucial meeting, or a clammy sweat before a fraught conversation? That is your body's visceral response to a threat that exists solely within the confines of your thoughts. It is akin to navigating a mental dark alley, convinced a monster lurks just around the bend. Your physiology primes itself for combat or flight, even though the alley is merely a figment of your imagination. This is where the snare tightens its grip most insidiously. We cling to the illusion that by thinking more intensely, by dissecting every facet, by foreseeing every potential pitfall, we will somehow wrest control. We tell ourselves, if I can just map out every way this can go awry, then I can prevent it. Yet, this is a sophisticated ruse our minds perpetrate upon us. This hypervigilant thinking does not grant us control, it pilfers our agency. It inundates us with such a deluge of potential catastrophes, so many what-ifs, that the sheer magnitude becomes paralyzing. It is like attempting to capture 1,000 butterflies simultaneously. You are left exhausted and empty-handed. The more we endeavor to think our way out of anxiety, the deeper we are drawn into its vortex. It resembles trying to escape quicksand by threshing more vigorously. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. This is the very essence of how anxiety operates as a physiological bluff, impervious to mere ratiocination. It deceives us into believing a mental skirmish is the solution, when in truth, it is the very battleground itself. The mind, in its misguided attempt to be helpful, begins to construct an entire cinematic epic of doom. It is not a single scene, but an entire trilogy of calamitous events. Each what-if query unlocks a new portal to escalating anxieties. What if I utter the wrong words? Begets what if they mock me? Which in turn spawns what if everyone despises me? And before you realize it, you are convinced your life is irrevocably ruined by a minor social interaction. This ceaseless cascade of what-ifs is a quintessential hallmark of succumbing to the overthinking trap. It is an egregious drain on your vitality, a potent fuel for your fear, and it never, under any circumstances, yields a resolution. It merely begets more apprehension. Herein lies the imperative to draw a sharp distinction between sagacious planning and anxious rumination. Planning involves foresight. You perceive a challenge and devise concrete strategies to surmount it. You inquire, what is the most effective approach to prepare for this presentation? And you might consider rehearsing your slides, researching your audience, and selecting your attire. This is generative. Anxious rumination, conversely, is the state of being ensnared by what if I falter? What if my voice trembles? What if they perceive me as inept? You are not seeking solutions, you are merely replaying worst-case scenarios. The former propels you forward, the latter renders you immobile. How does the brain's ostensibly preparatory response to potential threats, through overthinking, paradoxically amplify the physical manifestations of anxiety? It bears a striking resemblance to an oversensitive smoke alarm. Envision a wisp of steam from your kettle triggering the alarm with ear-splitting ferocity. Your brain, when engaged in overthinking, functions as that hypersensitive smoke detector. It magnifies a minor possibility of a problem or even a mere nebulous sense of unease into a 5-alarm conflagration. It then dispatches distress signals throughout your entire physiology. Your heart rate escalates, convinced of the urgent need to circulate blood more rapidly to facilitate an escape. Your respiration becomes rapid and shallow, a desperate attempt to saturate your system with oxygen for the imagined confrontation or flight. Your muscles tense, poised for immediate action. All these somatic responses are the body's mechanism for readying itself for a peril that is, in reality, absent. The unremitting mental rehearsal of danger consigns the body to a state of perpetual alert, rendering the anxiety profoundly tangible and urgent even when the actual threat is infinitesimal or non-existent. It is a self-perpetuating cycle. The more vividly you conjure danger, the more acutely your body reacts, and the more your body reacts, the more palpable the danger feels. What specific cognitive distortions or thought patterns characterize the trap of overthinking within the context of anxiety, and how do they diverge from rational problem solving? Several insidious thought patterns are at play here. One is catastrophizing, where a minor setback is extrapolated to its most dire conceivable consequence. For instance, missing a work deadline might be interpreted not merely as an error, but as irrefutable evidence of impending dismissal, the forfeiture of your home, and eventual destitution. Rational problem solving would entail direct communication with your superior, explaining the circumstances, and proposing an adjusted timeline. Another pattern is fortune-telling, a form of absolute, negative prediction regarding the future. You might declare, "I am certain I will botch this presentation," devoid of any substantiating evidence. Rational problem solving would acknowledge the potential for adverse outcomes while simultaneously considering the possibility of success and focusing on diligent preparation. Then there is mind reading, the assumption that you possess definitive knowledge of others' thoughts, invariably negative and directed at you. You might conclude, "They are scrutinizing me strangely. They find me peculiar." Rational thinking would entertain the possibility that they are simply fatigued, preoccupied with their own day, or perhaps not even observing you at all. Finally, all-or-nothing thinking or black-and-white thinking operates in extremes. You are either an unqualified success or an abject failure. There is no intermediate territory. A single misstep renders the entire endeavor null and void. Rational problem solving, conversely, embraces nuance and imperfection. It recognizes that errors are integral to the learning process and that success is seldom absolute. The fundamental distinction lies in the fact that overthinking becomes fixated on these distorted interpretations, thereby fueling anxiety, whereas rational problem-solving endeavors to clarify the situation and identify practical, attainable steps forward. Thus, while our minds may be diligently constructing elaborate disaster epics, our bodies are actively responding to them as if they were veridical documentaries. This perpetual, internal rehearsal of failure serves as the very engine that propels anxiety, ensnaring us in a Sisyphean cycle of dread. But what if we could disrupt this mental feedback loop? What if the key resided not in thinking our way out, but in acting our way out? This is where we commence our exploration into the potent efficacy of direct, even imperfect, action. 4. Physical signs of anxiety. The word itself carries a palpable weight, does it not? We often speak of it as a cerebral skirmish, a tempest of thoughts and apprehensions churning within the confines of our skulls. And while our minds indisputably orchestrate a significant portion of this internal drama, a fundamental truth lies obscured, a truth that underpins why the pursuit of thinking one's way out of anxiety invariably falters. Anxiety is not solely an inhabitant of your mind, it is a profound resident of your body. It manifests as a visceral experience, a potent and irrefutable sensation that can engender a disquieting sense of relinquishing control. Consider this: when anxiety descends, it transcends a mere thought like, "I might falter on this examination." It is the sudden, percussive assault of your heart against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat. It is the visceral knotting and twisting within your abdomen. It is the slick sheen of perspiration on your palms, the unnerving weakness in your knees, or a peculiar, resonant vibration coursing through your limbs. These are not trivial discomforts. They are the unequivocal and insistent pronouncements of your body responding to what it perceives as imminent peril. This juncture marks the commencement of our profound exploration into the corporeal manifestations of anxiety. To comprehend these physiological reactions is akin to illuminating the enemy with a powerful beam. It allows us to discern that anxiety is not some enigmatic, inscrutable force. Rather, it is a primal response, a survival mechanism that has, in essence, become somewhat disoriented. Anxiety is a bodily alarm system. Our physical vessels are marvels of intricate design. For millennia, they have been intrinsically programmed to ensure our preservation. When our forebears encountered a saber-toothed predator or navigated a perilous predicament, their bodies would instantaneously engage a state of heightened readiness. This is the celebrated fight, flight, or freeze response, a brilliant evolutionary stratagem. Your brain, in a fraction of a second, issues a directive to your body: danger. Prepare to confront, to flee, or to assume an immovable posture. This preparatory cascade involves a surge of adrenaline and a host of other stress hormones. Your heart accelerates its tempo, propelling blood with increased urgency to your musculature, poised for action. Your respiration quickens, augmenting oxygen intake. Your sensory apparatus sharpens, diligently scanning for the perceived threat. Your digestive processes may decelerate, as the assimilation of sustenance is demonstrably not a paramount concern in a life-or-death scenario. Anxiety, in a multitude of its expressions, is precisely this ancient alarm system sounding its klaxon in the absence of any actual saber-toothed tiger. Your sympathetic nervous system, the segment of your physiology responsible for these rapid-fire reactions, becomes erroneously activated. It is akin to a smoke detector of excessive sensitivity, erupting at the faintest wisp of smoke, or at times, even merely the aroma of scorched toast. The physical sensations you experience are the direct consequence of this system revving its engines, ostensibly preparing you for a threat that, in the grand scheme of reality, might amount to little more than an impending deadline, a social engagement, or a challenging discourse. The paramount takeaway is that these responses are largely involuntary. You do not consciously elect to experience a racing heart or clammy palms when anxiety takes hold. It simply transpires. And frequently, its manifestation is disproportionately amplified relative to the actual circumstances. A minor apprehension can precipitate a monumental physical reaction. This is the very bluff we refer to. Your body is vociferously proclaiming danger, when the tangible threat is, at best, a minor inconvenience. The spectrum of physical manifestations, anxiety does not confine itself to a singular mode of presentation. It is a consummate virtuoso of disguise, impacting individuals in diverse, yet often overlapping, fashions. It adopts the guise of a chameleon, its hue shifting to accord with the situation, or perhaps, to ensure its presence is unequivocally acknowledged. Let us dissect some of the most prevalent ways in which anxiety announces itself within the corporeal realm. Cardiovascular. This is a favored arena for anxiety's machinations. You may experience your heart racing or pounding within your chest, as if intent on an escape. This phenomenon is frequently termed palpitations. At times, it can feel as though your heart is skipping beats or fluttering erratically. A sensation of tightness in your chest may also arise, a potentially alarming feeling that can engender concerns of grave, underlying issues. And then there is shortness of breath. It can feel as though you are perpetually struggling to draw a full breath, or as though a palpable weight is pressing upon your chest, impeding deep inhalation. On occasion, this can culminate in a sensation of choking. Gastrointestinal. Your stomach serves as another nexus for anxiety's influence. Numerous individuals articulate experiencing nausea, that queasy, unsettled sensation within the stomach. You might encounter stomach cramps or sharp, localized pains. The ubiquitous butterflies in your stomach sensation is also a common indicator, that fluttering, restless feeling. Furthermore, anxiety can precipitate an urgent need to use the restroom, as your body endeavors to expel waste in anticipation of perceived danger. Neurological sensory anxiety can disrupt your sensory perceptions and your nervous system in a myriad of ways. You might experience dizziness or lightheadedness, as if the world is in a state of perpetual rotation or you are on the verge of collapse. Tingling sensations are also prevalent, frequently manifesting in the extremities or the face, sometimes described as a pins and needles feeling. Sweating is a significant manifestation, particularly when there is no discernible environmental cause, such as being in an overheated room. Your hands may feel clammy, or a generalized perspiration may erupt. Trembling or shaking, especially in the hands, is another characteristic hallmark. You might also detect muscle tension, a sensation of tightness and stiffness, particularly in the neck, shoulders, or jaw. In certain instances, your vision can even be affected, appearing somewhat blurred or exhibiting an unusual distortion. Respiratory. While we have alluded to shortness of breath, anxiety can also induce hyperventilation, characterized by breathing that is excessively rapid and shallow. This can paradoxically lead to feelings of lightheadedness and a peculiar sensation of insufficient air intake, despite adequate oxygenation. The converse can also occur, where you find yourself repeatedly taking deep, sighing breaths, as if your body is attempting to compel itself into a full inhalation. Other manifestations. The list continues to expand. You might experience dry mouth, as your body redirects resources away from non-essential bodily functions. Hot flashes or sudden chills can occur. An overwhelming sense of fatigue or exhaustion may set in, even in the absence of significant physical exertion. And occasionally, anxiety can engender a feeling of unreality, where the surrounding environment appears peculiar, distant, or dreamlike, a phenomenon known as derealization, or you may feel disassociated from yourself, as if observing your own existence from an external vantage point. Depersonalization. It is imperative to recognize that not every individual will exhibit all of these symptoms, and their intensity can fluctuate dramatically from one person to another, and indeed, from one anxious episode to the next. Some days may be characterized by a faint flutter in the chest. Others might feel like a full-blown physical emergency. Your experience, whatever its form, is unequivocally valid. The cycle of misinterpretation. Herein lies the crux of the predicament, the point at which the mind begins to amplify the alarm signals emanating from the body. When you experience these intense physical sensations, particularly for the first time or when they are exceptionally pronounced, your mind's initial inclination is to seek an explanation. And given the alarming nature of these symptoms, the explanations we gravitate towards are frequently the most dire. That racing heart? Good heavens, I must be having a cardiac event. That breathlessness? I cannot draw air, this is the end. That dizziness? I am going to faint, or worse, I may be suffering a stroke. These are natural, albeit counterproductive, conclusions when your body is transmitting such urgent signals of distress. This misinterpretation represents the critical inflection point in the anxiety continuum. The physical symptom emerges, and rather than recognizing it as a misguided bodily alarm, your mind categorizes it as a harbinger of imminent danger or a serious ailment. This fearful cognition, in turn, precipitates additional anxiety. And what is the consequence of intensified anxiety? Your body responds with even more pronounced physical symptoms. This engenders a self-perpetuating cycle. Physical symptom, for example, racing heart, right arrow, fearful thought, I am experiencing a heart attack. Right arrow, heightened anxiety, right arrow, more intense physical symptoms, for example, chest tightness, shortness of breath, right arrow, further escalated fearful thoughts, right arrow, and so forth. This is the essence of the bluff. Your body is signaling danger, but your mind is overreacting to the signal itself, erroneously believing that the signal constitutes the danger. The peril lies not in the racing heart, it resides in the fear of the racing heart. The physical sensations are the body's admonition to be alert, but your mind interprets this as you are in grave peril, and here is definitive proof. This misinterpretation is precisely what renders anxiety so overwhelming and so formidable to surmount. The futility of thinking away physical sensations. Now, we arrive at the heart of why scream your way out is predicated on action, not merely contemplation. When ensnared within that anxiety loop, with your body in a state of alarm and your mind racing with fearful conjectures, what is your typical recourse? You attempt to rationalize your way out of it. You admonish yourself, calm down. This is not real. Nothing is wrong. But imagine attempting to placate a blaring fire alarm through reasoned discourse. You cannot logically explain to the alarm that there is no conflagration. It is a mechanical, primal response. Similarly, when your body is in a state of panic, awash in stress hormones, employing logic and reason is akin to whispering soothing reassurances to a hurricane. It is simply not designed to be effective. Indeed, at times, an excessive effort to analyze or suppress these physical sensations can paradoxically exacerbate them. The more intensely you focus on your racing heart, the more rapid its apparent tempo becomes. The more you fret about your shortness of breath, the more challenging it becomes to achieve a deep inhalation. This heightened focus on the physical symptoms draws increased attention to them, magnifying their perceived threat and, consequently, amplifying the anxiety. You become hyper-attuned to every minor bodily sensation, and each one metamorphoses into potential corroborating evidence for your deepest apprehensions. This is precisely why the concept of action-based anxiety confrontation holds such profound significance. It acknowledges that anxiety, at its core, is a physical bluff. It presents itself as an overwhelming, undeniable threat, but its potency is amplified by our mental reaction to its physical manifestations. Attempting to outwit this physiological response is analogous to striving to win a wrestling match by delivering a speech. It is the employment of an inappropriate instrument for the task. The body is transmitting signals, and our minds are misinterpreting them, thereby initiating a snowball effect. We require a method to interrupt this cycle, not by dissecting the snow, but by altering the terrain. We must transition from a state of mental inertia, wherein we are ensnared in the endeavor to comprehend and control the unmanageable physical sensations, to a state of corporeal engagement. This engagement, this deliberate action, is what truly dissolves the spell of the anxiety bluff. It is about demonstrating to your body and to yourself that you are in command, not through passive contemplation, but through active intervention. Having now elucidated the irrefutable physical imprint of anxiety, the pounding heart, the churning stomach, the trembling hands, it is abundantly clear that these are not abstract worries. They are the body's exceedingly real, albeit misguided, signals. But here lies the critical revelation. These signals, while formidable, are a bluff. And like any bluff, it can be decisively called. The subsequent step is not to deconstruct the bluff, but to confront the situation that precipitated it directly and with unwavering resolve. 5. Breaking the cycle. Imagine this familiar tightening in your gut, the constricting band around your chest, the clammy slickness of your palms. Your mind, a runaway train, hurtles into a cascade of what-ifs. Is this real? Am I capable of weathering this? And then, before conscious awareness can intervene, you are ensnared, pulled into a relentless vortex of apprehension, physical distress, and a desperate urge to flee. This is the anxiety loop, a gilded cage many of us inhabit. To dismantle this trap, we must first dissect its architecture. It typically commences with a subtle disturbance, a stray thought, a nascent situation, a whisper of a feeling. Let us designate this the trigger. It might be the looming specter of a deadline, the social calculus of an impending gathering, or simply a phantom. worry that materializes from the ether. Upon the trigger's appearance, your mind ignites, shifting into an elevated state of alert. This is the realm of thought and emotion. Your internal monologue becomes a relentless interrogation of potential calamities. What if I falter during this presentation? What if I am a pariah at the party? What if this suffocating sensation never dissipates? These are not idle contemplations, they are imbued with a potent dread, a premonition of inevitable disaster. Almost instantaneously, your physiology responds. This is the physical manifestation. The knot in your stomach constricts with renewed vigor. Your heart's rhythm accelerates into a frantic cadence. A disorienting lightness may pervade your head, or your breath may become a shallow, desperate gasp. Your body is broadcasting a primal alarm, danger. Even when the perceived threat is microscopic or entirely illusory, herein lies the insidious complexity. Because the physical sensations are so profoundly uncomfortable and the accompanying thoughts so terrifying, your innate impulse is toward avoidance or obsessive analysis. The desire to escape the visceral discomfort propels you to sidestep the inciting incident. You may opt out of the social engagement or postpone the commencement of the work task. Alternatively, you might attempt to resolve the predicament through ceaseless rumination. You dissect the scenario ad infinitum, seeking an elusive pathway to silence the anxious whispers. Yet, the cruel irony is that this avoidance and overthinking offers no solace. It actively amplifies the distress. When you circumvent a situation, you forfeit the opportunity to discover your own resilience. You are denied the chance to witness the absence of the dreaded outcome. Instead, your brain archives the avoided encounter as irrefutable evidence of its inherent peril, thus fortifying your apprehension for future encounters. And in the throes of overthinking, you become the unwitting fuel for your anxieties. You concede your undivided attention to them. Consider it an attempt to extinguish a nascent flame by dousing it with kerosene. Your brain, hardwired for survival, interprets this intense focus on worry as an indicator of genuine threat. Consequently, it escalates the physical alarm signals. This precipitates an intensification of thought and emotion, coupled with heightened physical sensations. The loop tightens, its grip becoming more formidable. You are now more profoundly anxious than at the outset, and the somatic repercussions are more potent. This, in turn, engenders an even more profound avoidance or obsessive analysis. You become more deeply convinced of your inadequacy, more resolute in your need to evade, or more desperate to unearth a solution that perpetually eludes your grasp. Thus, the cycle perpetuates, accelerating with each revolution, drawing you deeper into the gravitational pull of anxiety. This cyclical pattern is remarkably pervasive. Consider Sarah, who harbors a deep-seated dread of public speaking. The announcement of a work presentation arrives. Trigger, the formal notification of the impending presentation. Thought emotion, this is insurmountable. My voice will tremble. All eyes will be upon me. I will sound utterly foolish. Physical manifestation, her heart begins to pound a frantic rhythm. Her palms grow slick. A palpable lump forms in her throat. Avoidance obsessive analysis, Sarah's immediate recourse is to devise an escape route. Might feigning illness be a viable option? Or perhaps she can retreat to solitary rehearsal, meticulously memorizing every syllable, clinging to the hope that absolute recall will preclude missteps. She abstains from discussing the presentation's subject matter with colleagues, fearing they will perceive her unease. Intensification of thought emotion and heightened physical sensations. The more she dwells, the more vivid her potential failures become. The physical manifestations escalate a wave of nausea, a disturbance in her sleep patterns. Deeper avoidance obsessive analysis. Now, her conviction of incapacity is solidified. The prospect of addressing an audience looms as an insurmountable Everest. The cycle has amplified its intensity. This underscores precisely why attempts to reason one's way out of anxiety are so frequently futile. Our intellects are remarkable problem-solving instruments, but anxiety is not a logical conundrum. It is a visceral, often overwhelming, confluence of physical and emotional experience. When you endeavor to dissect, analyze, and rationalize it solely through cognitive means, you are employing the wrong implements. It is akin to attempting to mend a fractured limb by sketching its blueprint. Intellectual comprehension is achieved, but tangible healing remains elusive. Overthinking anxiety paradoxically nourishes it. Each instance of dwelling on an anxious thought imbues it with greater potency. You are signaling to your brain, "This is of paramount importance. Grant it your full attention." Your brain's inherent mandate is to ensure your safety. Therefore, if you concentrate all your mental faculties on a perceived threat, your brain concludes that a threat must indeed exist. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you ruminate on your anxiety, the more anxious you become. You become trapped in a feedback loop of contemplating your thoughts, which amplifies your anxiety, which in turn prompts further contemplation, and so on. The fundamental power of anxiety resides in its somatic manifestations. The racing pulse, the trembling extremities, the pervasive sense of dread, these are the sensations that implant the conviction of imminent peril. They feel undeniably real and threatening. This is the bluff. Anxiety is akin to a poker player holding a weak hand, yet projecting an unshakable confidence. The physical symptoms are the exaggerated grimaces and assertive posture, meticulously crafted to persuade you of their winning hand. They are designed to halt your progress, to compel retreat, to enforce avoidance. They are a potent physical signal that screams, "This is too much. Withdraw." However, here lies the crucial revelation. These physical sensations, while alarming, are frequently merely your body's alarm system misfiring. It is analogous to a smoke detector that sounds its alarm at the mere whiff of toast. The siren is piercing and alarming, yet it does not signify a conflagration. Your body's fight-or-flight mechanism is a primitive apparatus designed for immediate physical dangers, such as evading a predator. It is ill-equipped for the intricate, often imaginary, threats of contemporary existence, such as the concern over another's opinion. The physical sensations are the bluff, and the bluff's purpose is to immobilize you. The toll of remaining ensnared in this cycle is profound. Every moment spent wrestling with anxiety, evading opportunities, or engaging in ceaseless rumination is a moment of life unlived. Consider what you forfeit. That career advancement you neglected to pursue, convinced of your inadequacy. That journey you deferred, paralyzed by the fear of flying. That nascent connection you hesitated to forge, apprehensive of rejection. That avocation you long harbored a desire to explore, yet never initiated. Each act of inaction, orchestrated by anxiety's bluff, diminishes your world. It erects invisible barriers, circumscribing your experiences and curtailing your potential. The longer you remain captive within the cycle, the more you begin to internalize this state as your immutable reality, your new normal. Your world contracts, its vibrancy fades, and its inherent possibilities dwindle. The apprehension of anxiety itself can eclipse the fear of the initial trigger, leading to an overwhelming sense of stasis. Let us return to Sarah. Her avoidance and excessive contemplation of the presentation meant she lost out on invaluable opportunities. She was denied the chance to hone her skills, to impress her superiors, or to experience the profound satisfaction of overcoming a formidable challenge. She missed a potential career advancement and the attendant boost to her self-assurance that successful delivery would have afforded. Her world remained static, and her phobia of public speaking only intensified, rendering subsequent announcements even more daunting. The cycle did not merely persist, it deepened, diminishing the likelihood of future opportunities. The central tenet to grasp here is that anxiety is not a problem amenable to increased cognitive engagement. It is a physical bluff designed to induce paralysis. And the more you attempt to reason with a bluff, the more convincing it becomes. The more you strive to outthink anxiety, the more leverage you grant to anxious thoughts, and the more pronounced that physical sensations become. You are, in essence, reinforcing the very phenomenon you seek to escape. The cycle is self-sustaining, and our inherent proclivity for analysis and avoidance is its engine. Comprehending these underlying mechanics that trigger the thought, the physical reaction, and the subsequent avoidance or overthinking is indispensable. It represents the inaugural step in recognizing your entrapment within a pattern. It is about perceiving anxiety for what it frequently is, a potent, yet ultimately surmountable, bluff. This understanding forms the bedrock. However, identifying the cycle constitutes only half the battle. The true endeavor, the genuine pathway to liberation, arises not from further contemplation, but from an entirely different form of engagement. It emerges from action. Chapter 2. Taking action to overcome anxiety. 1. The power of small steps. Anxiety presents itself as a formidable adversary, a monstrous entity that demands a cerebral duel. You attempt to reason it into submission, to articulate precisely the words that might quell its ferocity. Yet it merely scoffs, its power amplifying. This is its artifice. Anxiety is not a puzzle to be solved by intellect. It is a visceral sensation, a physical manifestation within your corporeal being. And the only true method to dismantle a bluff is to confront it, to engage actively, even when your mind employs you to remain inert. The phrase taking action might, however, seem monumental, might it not? It conjures images of sudden bravery, of tackling the most daunting of challenges. For one already submerged in a deluge of apprehension, this appears an insurmountable feat, another indictment of perceived failure. This is precisely where we shall recalibrate our approach. We need not scale Everest to conquer anxiety. A single, minuscule step suffices. Herein lies the profound simplicity, the potency of incremental progress. Consider this. When ensnared, when your thoughts spiral into a vortex of hypothetical catastrophes and your chest constricts with tension, the last inclination is toward a grand undertaking. But what if the mandate was merely to perform a minor act? An action so subtle it scarcely registers as such. This is the nascent stage of deconstructing the bluff. Anxiety declares you are incapable. Yet, by performing any action, however diminutive, you begin to falsify its claim. The physical act of embarking on even a minuscule, imperfect endeavor directly opposes the bluff of anxiety by redirecting your focus. Anxiety ensnares you within the confines of your own mind, fostering the conviction that the perceived peril is both imminent and overwhelming. When you engage in physical action, you liberate yourself from this mental prison. Your cognitive faculties are compelled to attend to your body's movements. It functions as a diversion, albeit a beneficial one. Envision a profound apprehension regarding initiating conversation with an unfamiliar individual. Your mind teems with potential missteps, and you simply inhale. This is a physical action. Or perhaps you simply advance a pace closer to the person. This, too, is a physical action. These subtle movements signal to your autonomic nervous system, we are engaged. We are not passively succumbing to fear. It is akin to a nascent ember of control amidst a tempest of dread. Neurologically, this involves activating the neural pathways responsible for motor function and action, which can serve to subdue the alarm signals emanating from the amygdala, the brain's designated danger assessor. It is a declaration of sovereignty, asserting your command over the situation, not anxieties. Let us examine tangible illustrations. Consider Sarah. The mere contemplation of attending a social gathering precipitates a knot in her stomach. Her mind becomes a crucible of distressing thoughts. What if I am overlooked? What if my words betray my inadequacy? What if I am left adrift in awkward silence? Consequently, she abstains. Each instance, anxiety prevails. But what if Sarah resolved to undertake a modest action? Rather than aspiring to have an exquisite time at the party, her objective could be considerably more circumscribed. Her inaugural step might simply be the decision to adorn herself in a particular attire. That is all. The act of dressing. It is physical. It engenders a modicum of discomfort, signifying proximity to the dreaded event, yet it remains manageable. Upon donning the chosen garments, she can affirm, "This is a triumph. I accomplished this." There is no requisite for immediate confidence or elation. The victory resides in the execution. The subsequent action could be the simple act of walking to her vehicle. Again, a physical endeavor. Subsequently, perhaps driving to the venue with the explicit intention of remaining for a mere 30 minutes. This constitutes a predefined, modest objective. Each of these discrete actions, donning the attire, traversing to the automobile, driving with a temporal limitation, represents micro-victories. They are minor triumphs Sarah can acknowledge. She is not endeavoring to intellectually surmount her anxiety. She is not attempting to cultivate courage. She is simply performing actions, and through their execution, she demonstrates to her anxiety that its dominion is not absolute. The bluff is progressively exposed, one minuscule step at a time. This embodies the essence of action-based anxiety confrontation. It eschews grand pronouncements. It recognizes anxiety as a physical deception, and the most effective countermeasure is direct physical engagement. Each modest action, irrespective of its perceived imperfection, constitutes a direct confrontation. It is a movement away from the paralysis of fear and toward active participation in life. Why do these incremental steps possess such profound efficacy? Because they cultivate momentum. Anxiety engenders a sensation of immobility, as if one were mired in quicksand. Each time you execute a small action, you extract yourself incrementally from that mire. You initiate movement. And movement, however gradual, signifies progress. Each minor triumph builds upon the preceding one. Sarah adorned herself. This felt manageable. Then she drove to the gathering. This presented a slightly greater challenge, yet she persevered. She remained for 30 minutes. She engaged in conversation with one individual. These are all sequential steps. Each adds a marginal increment of self-assurance. It is akin to a snowball descending a slope. It commences small but accumulates velocity and mass as it progresses. The paramount element in this process is the celebration of these minor achievements. This is not about ostentatious boasting or the delusion of an overnight cure. It is about acknowledging your sustained effort. When Sarah donned her attire, she could pause momentarily and internalize, "I accomplished that." It was a step. Upon arriving at the gathering, she could reflect, "I have arrived." This is progress. This internal validation is indispensable. It is akin to bestowing upon oneself a gentle commendation. It reinforces the positive behavior, thereby increasing the likelihood of subsequent action. Without this recognition, these small victories can easily be subsumed by the cacophony of persistent anxiety. You may execute the deed, only to immediately pivot to what remains to be done or what transpired amiss. This brings us to a profoundly significant realization: an imperfect action is nonetheless progress. This is an immense revelation. Anxiety frequently paralyzes us due to our fear of imperfect execution. We anticipate missteps, blunders, and public embarrassment. Consequently, we opt for inaction. But what if the objective is, in fact, imperfect action? What if the sole aspiration is to perform the action regardless of its perceived quality? Consider the process of learning to ride a bicycle. You do not commence with effortless pedaling. There is wobbling. There may be falls. You might sustain abrasions. Yet you persist. Each faltering attempt, each near disaster, is an action. It is progress. If you were to defer action until perfect proficiency was attained, you would never acquire the skill. Anxiety operates in a similar fashion. It advocates for delayed action until a state of absolute calm and unwavering confidence is achieved. However, such a moment may never materialize. The path to managing anxiety lies in acting concurrently with the experience of apprehension. For an individual grappling with public speaking, the ideal outcome might be the delivery of a flawless, inspiring address. This represents a monumental leap. A diminutive, imperfect step could be as simple as rising and offering a greeting to the assembled group. or perhaps merely articulating a single sentence from your notes. Your voice may tremble. It might falter. A blush might color your cheeks. But you did it. That is a victory. The objective was not a perfect speech. The objective was to speak. And you did. This imperfect action exposes the bluff by demonstrating that the world does not collapse when perfection is absent. This also constitutes the initial phase of graduated exposure and desensitization. Through the performance of these small, repeated actions, your nervous system gradually acclimates to the sensation of anxiety. When you initially experience apprehension regarding a particular stimulus, your body initiates a fight-or-flight response. It is a potent, immediate reaction. However, by repeatedly exposing yourself to that trigger in controlled, diminutive increments, your nervous system learns that the perceived danger is neither as immediate nor as severe as initially believed. Imagine an individual harboring a phobia of canines. The prospect of encountering a large dog elicits a state of paralysis. A small step would not involve petting a formidable animal. It might entail observing a photograph of a dog, subsequently, perhaps viewing a video depiction of a canine, then positioning oneself across the street from a dog park. Each step brings one marginally closer, a degree more exposed, yet remains within manageable parameters. The anxiety may persist, but its intensity diminishes. With each incremental step, the magnitude of the anxiety response begins to recede. The body and mind ascertain their capacity to navigate the situation. The bluff of overwhelming peril is progressively unveiled as manageable. Therefore, how can we translate this into concrete, actionable strategies for prevalent scenarios? For social anxiety, instead of aspiring to be the focal point of the gathering, your modest step could entail: decision: I shall attend the event. This represents a commitment, a mental precursor to physical action. Action 1: I shall enter the premises. A straightforward, physical act of ingress. Action 2: I shall procure a beverage and remain in its vicinity for 5 minutes. Provides a temporary point of focus and a brief, defined task. Action 3: I shall establish eye contact with one individual and offer a smile. A fleeting, low-pressure interaction. Action 4: I shall extend a greeting to one person. A verbal, albeit concise, engagement. Action 5: I shall remain for 30 minutes and then depart. A predetermined, manageable duration. Each of these constitutes a success. There is no imperative to engage in profound discourse or forge a new lifelong friendship. The sole requirement is to perform the small act. And subsequent to each, I acknowledge it. I offered a greeting. That was a step. For performance anxiety such as delivering a presentation or participating in a work meeting. Decision: I shall prepare my notes. A constructive action that fosters a sense of readiness. Action 1: I shall practice articulating the initial sentence aloud on a single occasion. Focus on the very commencement. Action 2: I shall execute 3 deep inhalations prior to commencing. A grounding, physical technique. Action 3: I shall direct my gaze toward one amicable countenance within the audience. A brief moment of connection. Action 4: I shall proceed through the initial minute without interruption. Concentrate on a brief, attainable temporal span. Action 5: I shall respond to one inquiry, even if the response is merely, I shall follow up on that. Demonstrates engagement without the onus of possessing all answers. For generalized apprehension that perpetuates inertia or impedes task completion. Decision: I shall compile a list of 3 requisite tasks. Organizing thoughts into actionable items. Action 1: I shall don my attire. A fundamental, yet often challenging, physical step. Action 2: I shall perform one minor household chore, such as washing a single dish or making my bed. A minuscule accomplishment. Action 3: I shall dispatch one electronic mail or place one telephone call pertinent to a task. Initiating communication. Action 4: I shall dedicate 15 minutes to working on a task, then cease. Short bursts of focused effort. The unifying principle across all these instances is that the action is deliberate, physical, and manageable. It is not about awaiting the sensation of readiness. It is about acting in spite of the absence of readiness. Anxiety constitutes the bluff. The small action is the act of calling that bluff. And each time you call the bluff, even with a minuscule movement, you diminish its power. You reclaim a measure of agency. You demonstrate to yourself your capacity for forward progress, even when your mind implores you to remain stationary. This is not an exercise in dismissing your emotions. It is about acknowledging them, taking a restorative breath, and subsequently performing a small action regardless. It is the understanding that anxiety is a potent sensation, but it is not the ultimate determinant of your capabilities. 2. Celebrating small wins. Anxiety's insidious whisper often tells us we are fundamentally lacking, that any endeavor falling short of absolute perfection is an outright failure. It insists that if our efforts didn't precisely match our imagined ideals, they are rendered meaningless. This all-or-nothing fallacy, a dangerous gambit anxiety employs to ensnare us, is precisely where our secret weapon resides, the power to define our own victories. In the relentless battle against anxiety, any step forward, however modest, is a colossal triumph. Recall a time when anxiety loomed like an insurmountable wall. The desire to surmount it was palpable, yet you remained paralyzed. Then, perhaps, you took a single, tentative step. Perhaps you merely gazed at the wall. Perhaps you even lurched a wobbly step in its direction before retreating. To anxiety, this constitutes defeat. But to us, those who are learning to shout our way free, this is victory. For you acted. You moved, even infinitesimally. You engaged with that feeling, however fleetingly. This is the essence of action-based anxiety confrontation. It is not about achieving flawlessness, but about mustering the courage to act. Anxiety is a grand deception. It presents itself as formidable and terrifying, but when met with action, its power diminishes. Celebrating these incremental triumphs is how we ensure this bluff is called, repeatedly and decisively. Why is this celebration so pivotal? Our brains are inherently attuned to experiences that feel rewarding. When we accomplish something, particularly an act that previously inspired dread, our brain bestows a small surge of reward. This reward communicates to our brain this action was beneficial. Let us repeat it. Anxiety attempts to usurp these rewards by whispering that the achievement was insufficient. Yet, through intentional celebration, we send an unambiguous signal. Action equates to positive reinforcement. Picture yourself navigating a video game. The final boss is not your initial adversary. You begin by mastering movement, then perhaps acquiring a minor power-up, then vanquishing a diminutive foe. Each of these small successes fortifies you, bolsters your confidence, and readies you for greater challenges. Celebrating your minor victories over anxiety is analogous to accumulating those power-ups. Each time you acknowledge a step forward, you augment your own fortitude. Consider how our internal narrative transforms when we begin to honor imperfect actions. Anxiety delights in casting us as helpless victims, incapable of rectifying anything. It perpetuates a cycle of self-defeating pronouncements. I cannot manage this, I am destined to falter, it is too arduous. When we resolve to celebrate even a minor exertion, we begin to disrupt that cycle. We commence crafting a new internal story. Rather than I failed because it was not perfect, we can articulate, I attempted, and that required courage. I progressed, and that is what truly matters. This paradigm shift occurs because we are recalibrating our brain's reward architecture. When our focus remains solely on grand, flawless outcomes, opportunities for genuine accomplishment are scarce, a reality anxiety diligently ensures. However, by celebrating any action, we engineer abundant occasions for positive reinforcement. This is akin to providing your brain with a continuous stream of encouragement. It begins to internalize that taking action is not only feasible, but also intrinsically rewarding. While anxious thoughts may persist, we now possess a potent counterargument, the tangible evidence of our own actions and the intrinsic joy derived from their acknowledgement. So, what are some practical avenues for enacting this celebration? It transcends a mere fleeting thought. Firstly, name your triumph. Refrain from a perfunctory "okay, I accomplished that." Imbue it with a distinct appellation. For instance, if the prospect of conversing on the telephone induces fear, and you manage to initiate a single call, however brief and awkward, you might christen it the audacious call or the voice victor. This lends your achievement a unique character, rendering it more indelible. Secondly, document it. A simple journal can become an invaluable ally. Daily, or each time you confront anxiety with action, record your deed. Subsequently, articulate why it constituted a victory. For example, today I ventured to the end of my street. Anxiety urged me to retreat, yet I persevered for an additional 5 minutes. This was a victory because I surmounted the fear despite my heart's rapid cadence. Witnessing these entries accumulate serves as potent testament to your ongoing progress. Thirdly, bestow upon yourself a small, tangible reward. This need not be an extravagant or costly indulgence. It is about forging a positive association. Did you successfully navigate the grocery store despite its perceived dreadfulness? Perhaps your recompense is an extra installment of your favorite program, a soothing cup of tea, or the pleasure of a beloved melody. The crucial element is that the reward follows the action and is something you anticipate. This reinforces the notion that taking action precipitates positive outcomes. Fourthly, share your triumph if it feels comfortable. Occasionally, confiding in a trusted confidant or family member about your minor victory can amplify its impact. Hearing their affirmation "remarkable" or "I am so proud of you" can be profoundly validating. It is akin to acquiring an external cheerleading squad for your endeavors. Fifthly, employ affirmations centered on action and courage. Instead of "I am not anxious," opt for "I possess the bravery to act," or "I cherish every step I undertake." These affirmations directly champion the principles of action and celebration. They transform into a mantra that effectively counters anxiety's detrimental pronouncements. Anxiety's stratagem is to instill a profound sense of powerlessness. It asserts our incapacity, our frailty, and the overwhelming magnitude of any given situation. Celebrating minor victories directly assails this perception. Each small action you undertake, and subsequently acknowledge as a triumph, is akin to holding a mirror to anxiety's falsehoods. You are irrefutably demonstrating to yourself that you are capable. You can confront your fears. You are more resilient than you suspect. Consider Sarah, who harbored a profound dread of public speaking. The mere contemplation induced clammy palms and a churning stomach. The prospect of addressing an audience felt like an insurmountable task. Anxiety's decree was, "You will falter. You will forget your words. They will mock you." This was the bluff. Rather than striving for an immediate, flawless oration, Sarah resolved to concentrate on minor victories. Her inaugural triumph was simply contemplating the speech's subject matter for 5 minutes without succumbing to distress. She recorded in her journal, "Today, I engaged with the presentation's theme for 5 minutes. My heart raced, but I did not flee. This is a victory." Her reward? A tranquil interlude with a chapter of her book. Her subsequent victory involved penning a single sentence on the topic. Again, she documented it, celebrated with a comforting herbal infusion, and noted, "I committed a solitary word to paper. This is progress." Then she managed to articulate that single sentence aloud in solitude. This represented a more significant stride, and she commemorated it by immersing herself in her favorite upbeat song. Each of these wins was minuscule, perhaps even laughable to an observer fixated on perfection. However, for Sarah, they were monumental. They constituted direct actions against the paralyzing grip of fear. Each small victory provided tangible proof that she was not devoid of agency. It began to erode the bluff. This methodology cultivates momentum. Anxiety often manifests as an immense, immovable mountain. Attempting to conquer the entire peak at once is overwhelming and typically unattainable. However, by focusing on taking one step, then another, and celebrating each individual step, you commence the ascent. Each step renders the subsequent one marginally less daunting. Your confidence burgeons with every minor triumph. It resembles a snowball descending a slope. It commences small, but gathers more snow, expands in size, and accelerates its descent. Your momentum grows with each acknowledged action. This brings us to the analytical inquiry of how the internal narrative transforms and the underlying mechanisms at play. When we commence celebrating imperfect actions, the shift is profound. It propels us from a passive, victimized internal state to one characterized by activity and empowerment. The cognitive mechanism at work is cognitive reframing. We are fundamentally altering our perception of our actions and their outcomes. Anxiety's narrative dictates action imperfect, outcome failure, increased anxiety. Our emergent narrative becomes action imperfect, outcome courageous endeavor, celebration, confidence, further action. The emotional resonance of this transition is immense. It shifts us from sentiments of shame, inadequacy, and apprehension to feelings of pride, accomplishment, and optimism. This occurs because we are activating distinct neural pathways. Instead of reinforcing the fear response pathways that anxiety exploits, we are constructing novel pathways associated with reward and resilience. The simple act of acknowledgement and celebration provides the essential positive feedback to fortify these new pathways. It is akin to providing your brain with a gentle yet persistent redirection. This leads directly to the practical steps a reader can implement immediately. Beyond journaling and rewards, you can consciously practice self-compassion. When you take an action and it does not unfold flawlessly, instead of self-recrimination, pose the question, what did it require of me to undertake this? How courageous was I to simply attempt it? Acknowledge the effort, the bravery, and the underlying intention. Grant yourself absolution for any perceived imperfections. This self-compassion is indispensable because it prevents the imperfect victory from remorphing into a source of anxiety or shame. It ensures that the celebration is authentic and sustainable. Another immediate step is to create a victory jar. This is a tangible receptacle into which you deposit slips of paper, each bearing the inscription of a minor triumph. When experiencing heightened anxiety or discouragement, you can retrieve a slip and be reminded of your past successes. It serves as a concrete testament to your strength and progress. The fundamental principle here is to actively counter anxiety's narrative of deficiency with a narrative of action and advancement. Anxiety seeks to convince you that it is an insurmountable adversary. By celebrating every forward movement, irrespective of its scale, you are accumulating irrefutable evidence of your capability, your strength, and your forward trajectory. This is not about disregarding anxiety. It is about acknowledging its presence while consciously choosing to act nonetheless, and subsequently, bestowing credit upon yourself for that courageous decision. This consistent reinforcement not only fosters a sense of well-being, but actively reconfigures our neural architecture, establishing a robust internal framework of resilience. However, this momentum extends beyond mere internal shifts. It involves strategically applying this nascent confidence to increasingly demanding circumstances. The subsequent phase involves understanding how to deliberately escalate our engagement with action, transitioning from minor victories to confronting the very situations that once held us captive. 3. Building a habit of action. Consider your capacity for action against anxiety as a muscle, much like those in your limbs. In the nascent stages of physical training, even a modest number of push-ups or a brief jog can feel arduous. Your muscles may protest, and you might question the efficacy of your efforts. Yet you persist, do you not? Each day, or perhaps each week, you incrementally increase your exertion. Gradually, steadily, those muscles gain strength. You acquire the ability to lift more, to traverse greater distances, and to feel a heightened sense of competence. Your action muscle functions in precisely the same manner. Anxiety, it bears remembering, is a grand, boisterous deception. It endeavors to persuade you of your limitations, to instill apprehension about impending misfortunes, and to convince you of your inadequacy. The more you capitulate to this charade, the more your action muscle atrophies. It diminishes and succumbs to lethargy. Conversely, the more you consciously choose to act even when anxiety is vociferously asserting itself, the more robust that muscle becomes. This is not an exhortation to instantaneously transform into a superhero capable of confronting any fear without a flicker of trepidation. Far from it. It is about the subtle, consistent movements. It is about accomplishing a small feat today and another tomorrow. A 5-minute stretch is infinitely preferable to no stretch whatsoever. A 10-minute perambulation surpasses remaining sedentary. This unwavering, daily commitment is the true architect of the strength required to counteract anxiety. It is akin to meticulously chipping away at a colossal stone. It is not fractured by a single, mighty blow. Rather, it yields to myriad small, persistent taps. Each tap, each deliberate action, diminishes the stone's bulk, rendering it more vulnerable. And with each tap, your action muscle grows incrementally more resilient, more prepared for the ensuing challenge. Thus, how do we commence the cultivation of this muscle? We begin by initiating a step, so infinitesimally small that it borders on the absurd not to take it. We refer to these as microactions. Anxiety relishes in magnifying challenges, portraying them as insurmountable. It declares, you must compose an entire manuscript, or you are obligated to deliver a flawless presentation, or the entire domicile requires immediate tidying. Does this not evoke a sense of being overwhelmed? Your cognitive faculties falter. Your physical frame tenses, and you remain inert. But what if we dissect the task? Rather than compose an entire manuscript, the microaction could be, launch the computer and compose a single sentence. Merely one. That is all. Is this an arduous undertaking? Likely not. Instead of deliver a flawless presentation, it might be, recite the initial slide of your notes aloud. Simply read them. Abstain from judgment, from fretting about the timbre of your voice. Just read, or perhaps rise and inhale 3 deep breaths before commencing. In lieu of the entire domicile requires immediate tidying, consider, place a single dish into the dishwasher. One solitary dish. Do you perceive the diminutive nature of these steps? These are the kinds of actions that evoke a sense of almost comical apprehension. Anxiety endeavors to bluff you into believing you must ascend Mount Everest, while we propose you simply traverse a single step onto the initial, modest incline. This encapsulates the essence of this philosophy, this action-based anxiety confrontation. We are not attempting to outwit the anxiety residing within your psyche. We are confronting it directly, yet in a manner so minuscule, so manageable, that its execution is entirely feasible. Contemplate Sarah. Sarah harbored a profound apprehension of visiting the grocery store. The throngs of people, the cacophony, the sensation of confinement, all of it plunged her into a state of panic. For weeks, she resorted to ordering groceries online, a method that offered a semblance of security but fostered isolation. The prospect of entering the store felt like an immense, insurmountable endeavor. Her anxiety shrieked, "You will collapse. All eyes will be upon you. You will succumb to a panic attack." Consequently, we focused on microactions. The initial week's directive was simply, drive to the grocery store parking lot and remain in the vehicle for 5 minutes. That was the entirety of it. No entry into the store. It felt peculiar, perhaps even devoid of purpose, but she complied. She sat in the parking lot, felt her heart rate incrementally increase, took several measured breaths, and then returned home. And remarkably, she did not faint. No one stared. She did not experience a full-blown panic attack. It was tolerable. The subsequent week, the microaction involved, walk from the vehicle to the grocery store entrance, touch the door handle, and return to the vehicle. Still no entry. Merely the contact with the door. Once more, she perceived the anxiety, but she reassured herself, this is merely a micro-action. It is small. I am capable of this. And she executed it. She felt a degree of unease, but she persevered. Progressively, week by week, the micro-actions expanded incrementally. She entered the store for a mere 2 minutes. Then she selected a single item. Subsequently, she purchased that solitary item. Each step was modest, imperfect, and entirely achievable. Each instant she completed a micro-action. She did not merely endure. She experienced a faint spark of I accomplished this. This was not an endeavor to conquer the entire grocery establishment in a single stroke. It was an effort to demonstrate to herself, through small, repeated actions, that her anxiety was indeed a fabrication. This leads us to a point of paramount importance, embracing imperfection as a marker of progress. Anxiety is a staunch advocate of perfection. It insinuates, if you cannot achieve it flawlessly, abstain from undertaking it altogether. It persuades you that any misstep, any stumble, any action that falls short of absolute flawlessness renders the entire endeavor futile. This is an utter falsehood. Within our framework of action-based anxiety confrontation, an imperfect action still constitutes a triumph. Consider Sarah in the parking lot. Was it an ideal resolution to her grocery store phobia? Did she vanquish her anxiety in that precise moment? Not entirely. But did she take action? Absolutely. Did she confront the fear, even if only by sitting in the parking lot? That signifies progress. That is a victory. The objective is not to become an impeccable agent of action from inception. The objective is to initiate action. That awkward presentation? That is action. That occasion when you attempted a new recipe and it did not yield the anticipated outcome? That is action. That juncture when you felt apprehensive yet proceeded to dispatch that email? That is action. Your internal arbiter, the one that bears a striking resemblance to your anxiety, will endeavor to contradict this. It will assert, observe, your delivery was quite awkward, or that dish was a culinary catastrophe, or that email could have been articulated with greater finesse. Disregard that critic. Instead, express gratitude for its opinion and then concentrate on the incontrovertible fact that you executed it. You articulated your thoughts. You activated the stove. You transmitted the message. These are not failures. They are pedagogical opportunities. They are data points. They illustrate your capacity to advance, even when the circumstances are less than ideal. Each imperfect action cultivates fortitude. It teaches you that you can endure awkwardness, that you can manage errors, and that the world does not cease to exist when events deviate from your projections. This is where the enchantment of habit formation becomes apparent. Do you not brush your teeth each morning with minimal conscious thought? That is a habit. It forms a cycle, a trigger awakening, a routine brushing teeth, and a reward clean teeth, fresh breath, a sense of well-being. We can establish a comparable habit loop for initiating action. Our trigger might be the sensation of anxiety beginning to stir or encountering a task that appears daunting. The routine is our microaction. And the reward? This is the pivotal element for cementing the habit. The reward is the feeling of accomplishment, the subtle surge of pride, and critically, the transient alleviation of that anxious sensation. When you undertake that microaction, even if it merely involves sitting in the parking lot, that anxious feeling frequently subsides. By a degree, that reduction serves as the reward. Your brain registers this. When I performed that small act, the unpleasant sensation diminished in intensity. That is beneficial. By consciously acknowledging and celebrating these minor triumphs, we reinforce that neural pathway. We communicate to our brain, indeed, taking action, even imperfect action, leads to a positive outcome. This increases the likelihood that you will repeat that action the next time the trigger arises. In due course, this action becomes more automated. It transforms from a struggle into a more natural response. It is as if your brain begins to anticipate the reward of action rather than the discomfort of anxiety. Therefore, when Sarah sat in the parking lot and experienced a marginal increase in calm, that was the reward. When she touched the door handle and felt a diminution of dread, that was the reward. She was not merely tolerating the disquiet, she was actively creating a positive feedback loop. Action begets a minor victory, which fosters a sense of improved well-being, which in turn facilitates subsequent action. This is the mechanism by which momentum is generated. This is how you surmount the paralyzing inertia that anxiety imposes. Now, let us address the most significant obstacle, that initial impetus. We refer to this as activation energy. It is the intangible force that perpetuates your stasis. It is the sensation that necessitates a rocket's propulsion to initiate movement. Anxiety magnifies this energy barrier to an extraordinary degree. It convinces you that the requisite effort is colossal. We must devise strategies to diminish this activation energy. How do we achieve this? By rendering the starting point as facile as humanly conceivable. One method involves designating specific temporal intervals for your microactions. Instead of stating, "I shall attend to that later," articulate, "At 2 p.m. today, I will open my email and peruse the initial line of that crucial correspondence." A concrete time frame increases the probability of execution. Another potent instrument is external accountability. Inform a trusted confidant, partner, or family member of the microaction you intend to undertake. "Listen, I am going to walk to the end of my driveway and back at 10 a.m. Might you check in with me afterward?" Awareness of another's expectation can serve as a substantial motivator. It is akin to having a personal cheerleader urging you onward. Environmental cues can also yield remarkable results. If your aim is increased physical activity, arrange your workout attire the preceding evening. Place your running shoes near the doorway. If your intention is to practice a musical instrument, leave it accessible on its stand. These tangible reminders diminish activation energy because the action is, in essence, pre-arranged for you. You need not search for your footwear or retrieve your guitar. They are readily available, poised for engagement. This reduces the cognitive burden of initiation. For Sarah, the trigger was simply the perceived necessity of acquiring groceries. The routine was her preordained microaction. The reward was the slight abatement of anxiety and the burgeoning sense of self-efficacy. By consistently reducing the activation energy for each step, she rendered the entire process of visiting the store less daunting. She was not attempting to conquer the entire establishment at once. She was merely endeavoring to execute the very next, exceedingly small step. And because that step was so minuscule, the required activation energy was negligible. It was akin to nudging a boulder already positioned on a gentle downward incline. Cultivating this habit of action involves recognizing that anxiety is a bluff, and the most effective means of prevailing is to continue playing, one small, imperfect move at a time. It entails acknowledging that each instance you elect to act, irrespective of how diminutive or awkward that action may be, you are augmenting your action muscle, you are diminishing anxiety's deception, and you are advancing yourself toward liberation. It is not about the absence of fear. It is about possessing sufficient courage to act in spite of that fear. And the more you practice, the less formidable that fear becomes. Having acquired the knowledge of how to cultivate this habit of action, the subsequent phase involves comprehending how to sustain that momentum, even when circumstances become challenging. For challenges will inevitably arise. Life presents unexpected difficulties, and at times, our action muscle may feel as though it has regressed to its initial state. This is precisely why we must learn to actively amplify your wins and navigate setbacks. This is where we learn to truly harness the potency of those minor triumphs and fortify ourselves against the unavoidable disruptions. Conclusion: you have traversed the echoing chambers of anxiety alongside me, and in doing so, unearthed a profound truth. This persistent unease, this visceral clench in your gut, this drumming in your chest, it is a physical artifice, a masterful charade designed to paralyze you, to trap you in a labyrinth of your own thoughts where escape appears illusory. We have come to understand that attempting to reason your way out of anxiety is akin to whispering logic at a tempest. It is an exercise in futility. The true alchemy, the genuine pathway to liberation, resides not within the confines of your contemplation, but in the aliveness of your feet, the dexterity of your hands, the resonance of your voice. It is found in the courageous act of doing. This, in essence, is the bedrock of what we term action-based anxiety confrontation, the deliberate, often imperfect, engagement with situations or sensations that stir anxiety, recognizing them as mere physiological deceptions, and leveraging these actions to forge a trajectory toward freedom. The scream we speak of is not invariably a cacophony. At times, it is the silent, resolute stride forward, the audacious decision to venture, the unvarnished declaration of your will to break free. I acknowledge that this passage has been anything but facile. You have grappled with moments of profound doubt, periods when the specter of fear felt utterly insurmountable. Yet, observe your resilience. You remain, still absorbing these words, still possessing the volition to press onward. This very persistence is, in itself, a triumph. Bear in mind, progress rarely unfolds as a straight ascent. It is a meandering path, replete with ascents and descents. The paramount objective is to maintain forward motion, however diminutive the step. Perfection is not the quarry, it is the act of participation. Each endeavor, regardless of its perceived awkwardness or imperfection, marks a progression. Consider this: the instant you initiated that first tentative action, perhaps making that dreaded telephone call or venturing outdoors for a mere 5 minutes, you challenged the bluff. You demonstrated to your anxiety that its dominion was not absolute. And with each of these incremental victories, you cultivate momentum. It is akin to a snowball descending a slope. Commencing as a mere speck, it gathers mass and velocity with every revolution, rendering its continued descent increasingly effortless. Your internal narrative undergoes a parallel transformation. The refrain of "what if I falter" gradually yields to a whispered, then confidently articulated assertion: I succeeded, and I possess the capacity to do so again. This is precisely where the celebration of every accomplishment becomes an indispensable catalyst. These are not simply perfunctory acknowledgments. They are the very fuel that sustains your engine of action. Each time you recognize a step forward, you reinforce the efficacy of action-based anxiety confrontation and fortify the resolve to embrace greater challenges. Resist the insidious lure of perfectionism, which tempts you to await an idealized moment or an flawless execution. This is invariably another stratagem employed by anxiety to perpetuate your stagnation. Instead, embrace the ethos of the imperfect warrior. You are one who shows up, one who attempts, one who learns, and one who perseveres, even in the face of adversity. This is an infinitely more potent attribute than an unblemished facade. So, how does one celebrate? Chronicle your successes, however modest they may appear. Share them with an individual who champions your progress. Bestow upon yourself a small token of appreciation, or simply carve out a quiet interlude to acknowledge your own inherent bravery. Do not permit reservations to dilute this moment. Simply celebrate. Anxiety may perpetually inhabit the periphery of your existence, much like a familiar, albeit occasionally unwelcome, acquaintance. However, it need not assume the role of your sovereign. Through the consistent application of action-based anxiety confrontation, you will acquire the mastery to navigate its currents, to attenuate its hold upon you. This is not a quest to obliterate every anxious rumination, but rather to command your response to it. Therefore, advance, you imperfect warriors. Discern the bluff, embrace the action, and propel yourselves out of the shadows with your resolve. The world awaits the unveiling of your authentic, courageous, and wonderfully imperfect self. Your next triumph lies but a single action away.